But no, instead, the Vago's so-called expert gave a final all clear, packed his wand, stuck the check in his back pocket, and walked out the door. Let the intelligence gathering begin. The situation with old nemesis bro had Big Roy in a lather right from the get-go. It's gonna be on, he announced to the troops. But if we make a move on that motherfucker, we make a move on all of them. If the sons of hell try to stop us, we'll fuck them up too and take their patches. A little louder for the microphones, please. Someone could pull a gun, pointed out Big Todd. Maybe we should bring guns too, said Iron Mike. Several heads bobbed in acknowledgement before Randy pointed out the obvious. You know, we could lose a brother over a piece of shit. That got Roy heated. All I know is those fuckers broke the agreement and they're not making him give up that patch. We need to start gearing up fast because summertime is when this shit usually goes down. What does National say? Sparks wanted to know. Tramp's talking with the Purdue Angels now, Roy replied, but they're backing the Sons of Hell like we back the Green Machine. You really think the Angels will get involved? Asked Reddy, visibly concerned. Fuck the Angels, declared Big Todd. Hell nah. They're not gonna mess with us, said Cocksure Roy. We fucking own California. Man, I almost laughed out loud when I heard that one. Big Roy was delusional. If the Vogels went after the Sons of Hell, the Angels would almost certainly jump into the ring to defend their little brothers. And if that happened, a gang war could spread through the region like a brush fire whipped at the Santa Ana winds. I was keeping my fingers crossed. After the meeting, Roy took me aside. Remember that pistol I showed you a while back? You mean the 762? I said for posterity. Still want to buy it? The next afternoon, I walked into the Lady Luck with a pocket full of money and a microphone. Roy went behind the counter and brought out the check-made pistol he'd shown me the year before. He didn't explain why he was selling it and I didn't care, but the sale didn't come without stipulations. Here's the deal. I'll let you buy the gun, but I don't want you reselling it, understand? I don't want this thing coming back to bite me in the ass. Understood, I said. Don't worry, man. I'll keep it safe. As I counted out the money, I couldn't thank Roy enough for that badass gun and for selling it to a man with a felony who couldn't buy firearms on his own. And when the deal was done, that 762 was mine. So was Big Roy's ass. Gotcha, motherfucker. See you around the prison yard. I took the pistol back to the house on the Spirit Circle where John Carr photographed it, slipped it into a bag, then told me he was taking the weapon back to ATF as evidence. You can't do that, I said. Roy told me to hang on to it. I can't let you keep it, George. Well, if he asks to see it, I'll be in so much shit. Well, we'll figure it out, said John. Apparently, the Victorville Vagos had been making noise about riding against the Sons of Hell. Victorville was Cycle's chapter, and that high desert region was Terry the Tramp's stomping grounds. So you know those two had to be in touch. Cycle's been talking about hitting the Sons of Hell to make a statement, John told me. They're talking about pulling their patches and stealing motorcycles. This was news to me. I heard nothing at the Hemet church meetings. Where's that coming from? I wanted to know. John paused, then said, we got someone in Victorville. What? We've had someone under with Cycle's chapter since March. Another informant? No shit? I can't really explain why, but it was an oddly comforting feeling knowing someone else was out there doing the same crazy shit I was. I wasn't alone anymore. Do I know this guy? I asked. Might. His name's Charles. They call him Quick Draw. That didn't ring any bells. I might have bumped into this Quick Draw at the Screaming Chicken or any number of places, but I couldn't place him. Even so, once John gave me a little background, I felt like I had a pretty good handle on that government informant. Charles was the classic CI, a man working off a plea deal to save his bacon. He'd been convicted of armed robbery in Nevada, then busted by the DEA for running a meth lab in Pinon Hills, just over the San Bernardino Mountains. Charles had been facing serious federal time, as many as 20 years behind the walls, and hadn't been crazy about the idea, so he entered into a plea agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office in California. In return for his freedom, Charles had agreed to infiltrate the Mexican Mafia for the DEA. Once the DEA had finished with him, They turned him over to a sheriff's detective in San Bernardino. She was Shelly Kelly, a longtime veteran of the department who knew a thing or two about biker gangs. Detective Kelly's backyard was San Bernardino, considered the womb of outlaw country after delivering several infamous one-percenter gangs like the Hells Angels and, some might claim, the Vagos. When John Carr swore he'd send backup the day I went to Tramp's place to face the Angels, it was Shelly Kelly who hustled up to Hesperia to cover me. John once described handling informants as worse than having a kid. Being one of those kids, I wouldn't disagree. I sometimes called 10 times a day looking for words of wisdom from Uncle Johnny Law. Over the course of a long-term investigation like 22 Green, there might be thousands of calls and meetings. Shelly Kelly wasn't prepared to shoulder that kind of load by herself, and her department lacked the resources to babysit an informant 24/7. So she turned to the ATF's Los Angeles field office and Special Agent Darren Kozlowski for help. For Kaz, it must have felt like old home week, coming back to the Boggles to handle Charles. Only a few years before, he'd been on the inside looking out as a patched member for the Hollywood chapter. Getting patched hadn't nearly been the ordeal for Kaz's CI as it had been for me. Those desert chapters were like the Wild West, man, and infiltrating was as easy as hanging around the same bars. From there, it was a quick run up the ladder. Charles, aka Quick Draw, had been under a year less than me and was already a sergeant at arms in Victorville. According to John Carr, those desert boys had already given Quick Draw plenty of indictable material. In July, just a few months earlier, 2 Victorville Vagos had walked into a meth dealer's home in Lucerne Valley intent on robbery. Both those boys were spun on crank, armed with revolvers, and acting on a tip that a buyer with $6,000 in his pocket was coming over to score some dope. But the only person in the house was a 43-year-old tweaker named Little Johnny, who freaked out when the Vagos walked in and ran for the door. One of the Vagos, a 26-year-old dimwit named Twist, turned his gun sideways gangsta style and pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through Jimmy's back, then his heart. He made it out to the front steps where he died. The 2 Vagos fled the town and thought they'd gotten away with murder. And they would have too, except a few nights later, Twist was cruising the high desert with his new buddy Quick Draw. And Quick Draw, it turns out, was an excellent listener. He wanted to hear every thrilling detail of Twist's robbery gone bad, and the dumbass Vago was only happy to put it all on record. But now ATF had a dilemma. Charging those 2 Vagos with murder would mean revealing Quick Draw as the undercover source, and that informant was too productive to lose. For the long-term sake of the mission, John Carr and ATF made the decision to hold the evidence and keep fingers crossed that nobody got hurt while those killers roamed free. It was a gamble, a big fucking gamble. Eventually, when Operation 22 Green wrapped up and the takedown happened, Twist and his partner would answer for Little Johnny, a dead man who only wanted to get high. It's a checks and balance thing, John told me. We can get information from Charles that we can check off with you and vice versa. This way, one hand knows what the other is doing. Kaz and I think it would be smart to get you 2 together and coordinate our efforts. What do you think about meeting him? You want me to meet the CI? Yeah. Does he know who I am? Not yet. Good, because that's the way I want to keep it. He's a doper, John. And I don't trust dopers. That's all I fucking need is for this guy to flip on me. It ain't happening, man. My handler tried to convince me the Victorville CI had cleaned up as I had. But I wasn't going for it. In my experience, addicts rarely changed. Sooner or later, the old Charles would rear his ugly head and I'd be fucked. Like I told John, it all came down to trust, and I didn't trust that ex-tweaker CI. No. I wanted to keep the circle as tight as possible. Already with Detective Shelly Kelly aboard, it had welcomed more than I was comfortable with. Those in the know now included Detectives Kelly and Duffy, John Carr, and some of his ATF colleagues, my buddy old Joe, and last but not least, the mysterious undercover cop from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department who wrote outlaw, but my handler refused to identify.